It's fine.
All right. So we will be continuing our series on. Yes, Ben. Is that a question? Oh, you're gonna let me finish my. We're gonna be continuing our series on Philippians.
You're very polite.
Oh, you're
gentleman.
gonna finish my sentence.
Yeah.
I thought you were letting me finish my sentence. Okay, so what did we? Last week was kind of like a Bible overload. You weren't here, Pierce. You haven't been here in forever. Okay, this is a bad idea.
I know you magnification.
All right, so who remembers what we talked about last week? It was kind of like Philippians. It was kind of like a Bible verse. Like I kind of like had a bucket of Bible verses and dumped them for you last week or 2 weeks ago.
Bible verses.
Oh, it's like, and I'm sure of this.
Yeah.
For he who began a good work in you, will bring it to the completion of the day coming of Jesus Christ.
We'll bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. But no, that was like.
That's what I meant.
I know that's what you meant. That was really good. Right. Philippians 1:6. That was the reference.
That was my next. Oh, that was.
Right, so yeah, that was Philippians 1:6. So
Extra treats for you next week.
extra treats. So what was like the yes.
The gospel gives believers unshakable joy.
Good job.
More treats for you.
All right, what did we talk about specifically last week? There was the there was like a caterpillar and it was turning into a butterfly.
Wait, was I here?
I don't
I
remember.
don't remember.
I
You
don't
weren't
know.
here.
Yeah, you were here. You weren't here in our small group, but you were here in the lesson.
Okay, so what's up?
Were you here, Jesse?
I'm usually always here.
You are usually
Usually.
always here.
What?
Yes, Jesse.
Are you looking for the word of it?
Give me the word.
The caterpillar from
Yeah.
sanctification.
Sanctification. Wow, good job. That's a
And,
treat.
Does it start with a P?
Yes, there's two.
Personalization.
No.
Is it like personal almost?
Personification.
It's kind of like personal.
It's like something vacation.
Some personification.
Positional.
Position.
Okay, and positional occasion.
Positional and progressive sanctification. So, our standing before Jesus is we're set apart and we're good job. See, good job. Good job too, Jesse. But your small group leader's slacking on the encouragement.
I'm preoccupied at the
Girls
moment.
got the boys tonight.
Sit down.
All right, so we should have that.
Come
Okay.
on, gents.
So the theme of Philippians is Pierce. The theme of Philippians is the gospel gives believers unshakable joy. So rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I'll say rejoice is like our theme verse.
That's a song.
This is
Oh,
yeah.
that's lovely.
I saw this before.
My favorite. No.
Shh. Ready?
I would not want to get punched in the face.
It sounds like an elephant.
So Pierce, since you weren't here, what's your name?
Bella.
Bella. Hi, Bella.
Getting
I'm Tim.
punched in the face.
That is, guy is getting
Just
punched in the
keep
face.
watching.
But there's no more.
Oh, I thought he keeps. I thought that was like.
No, it doesn't happen. It should happen. But the whole point of that is to have joy in suffering. Because he's smiling while he's getting punched in the face. No questions. No questions. All right. Oh. Shh, don't read that. All right. So, Philippians. Let's see where we're going. The theme of the book is the gospel gives believers unshakable joy. So we're going to continue going through the book, and we're going to hit the next verses, which is Philippians 12 through 18. So before we start, I don't know if I think have I told you guys the story of my brother getting in a longboarding accident?
I love longboarding.
Did you-
I have. Alright, we need to hear a story.
Okay, so I think I definitely told the story. I definitely.
yeah.
I think I definitely.
I
think
you
you told us. Wait, what's
Okay,
the
I don't
story?
remember. My brother. Okay, so I'll tell the story. So last September, actually 3 days before I was supposed to go up to Word of Life for my second year of college, and training for stuff and all this other stuff. My brother and I were longboarding, and I used to be really into longboarding, and I got into it. So then Luke got into it because what's a longboard? Is that what you got? It's like a skateboard,
but thicker and longer.
and it has
Isn't
thicker
that
wheels.
incredible?
Oh yeah, that and you could do really, and it's easier to turn. And you
It's
can do really big
No,
tricks
it's like
with the turning.
gliding. Fun flying.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
sister was
Surf,
along.
but
Yeah, it's just like it's like a skateboard that you can like ride for long distances. It's like the whole idea of it. So I used to be like into longboarding with all my friends, and we would go down hills and like all this stuff. So like, I got my brother into it, and my cousin, my little cousin, he's like 9, has like one of those plastic electric ATVs that like stink, but it's like an ATV, so it's kind of fun. So we tied a rope to the back of it, me and my brother, and he was getting pulled on it by the rope, and I'm
You mean like
riding
the ones
this
that go like
ATV.
2 miles an hour?
Yes. And so I go around, like at the end of the street, I go around this like turn, and my brother, his wheel hits a manhole cover, and he wasn't going fast enough to like go over the manhole, so his board stopped, and he wasn't wearing a helmet, and he fell, and like his legs got tangled. And you know how like sometimes when you awkwardly fall, like it was just like his legs got tangled, and he fell straight back, and he hit his head on the concrete.
Oh, I
And-
did that. I fell off a golf cart.
Pierce, is this your story or mine?
I fell off a golf cart.
All right, you fell off. Okay. So my brother falls off the longboard, and he hits his. And I didn't see it as much as I heard it, so I hear him hit his head, and I turn and I jump off the like little 4-wheeler, and I'm like, Luke, are you okay? And he's laying on the ground, and he goes, Tim, my arm, I can't move it, and it locks up, and he just starts having a seizure in the middle of the street, and so he starts foaming out of his mouth. His eyes roll to the back of his head. And I grabbed like the back of his head because I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm like, maybe if I keep his head stable, and he's seizing and he's foaming out of his mouth. And I have my little 3-year-old cousin with me too, who's just sitting on the ATV. He's like, "What's going on, Tim?" And my brother's like seizing on the ground, and then I put my hand on the back of his head, and I feel like the like where he hit his head, it like immediately swells and it just feels like gunk. And I was like, his head broke and his brain spilled out the back of his head, and he stopped seizing, and his eyes, he's like not there. And he's like a vegetable, and I'm freaking out. It wasn't funny when it was happening. It was like, it was awful. Like, it's funny now, but it was like the worst thing. It was like probably like top 2 like worst moments of my life, because I thought my brother just either is going to die or turned into a vegetable, and I'm not entirely sure if my brother's saved.
It's not like a...
So it was like awful. It was like the worst. It was terrible. And all the neighbors start coming out of their houses to watch, and I start yelling at them. I'm like, "What are you doing? Like, go inside!" Like, I don't know why. What are you gonna do? Like, so and while he's seizing, I'm calling 911. So 911 pulls up. They get him in the ambulance. My mom's down the road, like in the house. So I run down. We get in the car, and we're driving to the hospital. And my dad went in the ambulance with my brother, and everyone in the car is just crying because we think like Luke's. He hit his head and he was seizing in the middle of the street, foaming out of his mouth in the middle of the street. And so we're like crying, we're terrified. Yes,
What was he filming? Like, spit or
I
the
don't
acid?
know. I genuinely, I don't know what comes, like,
It was just foam.
yeah, like
Probably.
rabies, like foam comes out of it. I don't think you like foam rabies, but like you foam something. So like we're in the car and we're crying. Like me, my mom, and I think my Aunt Joyce are there. Like, well, oh no, blah 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 blah. And then, yeah, blah blah blah. I don't know what you're saying. It was just like very emotional. And then, so as we're crying, Mom's like, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? I'm like, Mom, let's just pray. Let's pray right now. And so we start praying. And not that like prayer is like, it instantly takes away all like fear, but it's like when we started praying with the idea of giving it to God, not like, oh no, this situation's the worst thing ever, how could this happen? It was like, God, whatever your will is to this situation, let it happen. If we go to the hospital and Luke is like paralyzed from whatever happens, like help us glorify you through it. Help whatever your will is to like happen, and like we want that to happen, but this stinks still. So, and that was like literally like worst experience of my life. Like I haven't longboarded since, and I loved longboarding. Like there was one time, real quick segue. Me and my one friend Rizzo. I think I might have told this story. His name was Rizzo. We're going down this hill at Word of Life, and we were going like 40 miles an hour. Like we were flying, and we go around this turn, and there's all these bumps. And so I go over the bumps, and I make it. And then Rizzo sees the bumps, and he's like, "Oh no, there's bumps. I'll try to like avoid them." So he tries to avoid them, but then because he tried to avoid them, he couldn't make the turn back, and he hit the dirt and just like face planted, rolled, and he had to get airlifted to the hospital. Like helicopter came, like took him to the hospital. It was crazy. Like and I longboarded after that, but like when Luke hit his head, like I haven't longboarded since. So
Luke's okay though.
yeah, Luke. Well, I don't know. You know, he's okay now,
Wait,
but there might be something.
what
a
did
little bit
they
so.
like pick him up or?
No, it was like
I
when
was
we got.
going bodyboarding, and the waves were like huge. It was insane. Oh, you were there?
Yes, I was there.
Yeah, I
we were
remember.
all there.
And then the wave was too curved up, and I tried to. It was like really huge. It was like at least 10 feet tall. The wave, no, maybe not 10, maybe 9. But I got sucked up, and it's just. I got sucked up into the wave, and it crashed me down. So I tumbled and slammed my jaw, and I was in an underbite. And these four teeth, and they're still sort of loose. Were all flat, pretty much. And I had a concussion. It was really painful.
That's what happened to Luke. He got a really bad
So
concussion.
how did God take care of Luke? Sounds like he took care of him
Oh.
pretty good though.
As soon as, like, literally, we walked into the hospital, and he was, like, sitting in bed, and he's like, hey, guys. We're like, what? And they were like, oh, yeah, he's fine. He's just going to be, and, like, he got a really bad concussion, but, like, Luke was completely fine. Like, yes,
So, what happened to your 3-year-old cousin?
nothing. He sat there, and then my aunt took him inside. So we get to the hospital, and then another cool story, literally, every single pastor from this church showed up at the hospital, like, within, like, an hour. Like, I think Pastor Phil showed up, Pastor Jack showed up, and Pastor Hal, and their wives. Like, they were all just there. I don't think Candy was there, but that's because she has, like, a bunch of kids that I have to take care of. But, like, they all showed up, and they prayed, and it was super cool. So, I don't know if anything like that has ever happened to you guys. Like, I'm assuming not necessarily. Okay, I don't want it to put your hand. No, not like stories where you got hurt. Like.
No, my dad.
I fell out of
The
a
line
golf cart.
of his esophagus was all torn away, so he was in a hospital all last week.
Really? Is he okay now?
No,
Is he still in the hospital?
no, not at home.
Okay, well, we can talk about that after. You can talk.
I fell out of golf
Okay,
carts.
no more stories. All right, so.
I wasn't foaming out of the mouth.
Okay, thank you, Pierce. All right, so now all of you guys are like 12, 13, 14. I don't know if any of you are even 14. Sorry, you're 14?
Yes.
No, you're 14. Okay, so they're like 12, 13, 14. So like you don't have like a lot of time under your belt to be like under your belt. I don't know if that's how I say it. But like you don't have a lot of time like to experience like traumatic like life events. I mean, you might have. I don't want to assume you haven't, but it's like it might not have happened yet. So, but I mean, maybe I have a list of things that like very well could have happened. Like maybe you guys have had a family member die. Like I don't know. My grandpa died 3 years ago, and that was like up until, and I know like my brother's fine now, but like up until my brother's accident, that was like the worst thing that ever happened to me because I was like we were super close with my grandpa. But through that, because like he got super sick and died, he got saved right before he died. So, like, God obviously used that, like, his sickness and his death to, like, save him, which is super cool. But, like, I don't know, maybe you guys have had a family member die. Maybe, not that, like, struggling with your grades is on that same level, but maybe you're really struggling with grades in school. And it's, like, it might, like, come down to something, like, you have to go to summer school, and it's going to affect your life. Like, that hasn't happened to me. It almost happened to me my senior year. Like, and it was, like, really stressful. It was really hard to go through. Maybe you're facing a lot of, I don't know, like 90% of you guys are homeschooled, but like maybe you guys are facing like a lot of peer pressure at school to do things that you know are sinful, and not that's not on the same level as like your mom or like dad or like someone dying, but like maybe it's really hard. Every day you go to school and everyone picks on you for being a Christian. Maybe you go to school and everyone's doing this one thing that you know is sinful, like, and you feel, yes, Pierce? Okay. And you like feel like a pull, and you know they're trying to peer pressure you into doing it. Or maybe you have a really bad relationship with your parents, something as simple as that. Like every time you get home from school, your dad yells at you to do your homework. And even when you do your homework, your dad yells at you for not doing your homework good enough. Or your parents, like maybe you just have a really bad relationship with your parents. Maybe you get bullied at school. Maybe you struggle to make friends. Maybe you struggle with how you like view yourself. I know that's something like a lot of like people that I personally know struggle with. They don't like the way they look. They don't like the way other people, like they think they're ugly, they're fat, all this stuff, and it really affects the way that they like even live because they're so consumed with the way they look. Or maybe, I had this one kind of geared towards Tony, but maybe like you've moved recently. I don't know, you guys have.
I have.
Pierce,
2
okay.
years, I guess.
Alright, see, like maybe you moved recently, and, yeah. Maybe you've moved recently, and it's like, it's really hard on your family. It's really hard on you. You haven't made a lot of friends, something, blah, 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 so on and so forth's happening. or maybe you struggle with depression, sadness, hopelessness. I know, like going to Christian college, it's a lot easier for people to like say stuff that they struggle with. So like I know a lot of people at Word of Life Bible Institute who struggle with stuff like this, with depression, with being sad all the time, with just having no hope, and like no hope in the future, no hope in anything. They were just sad. And I don't know what you guys like. I don't know if it's any of that like is personal, or like if any of you struggle with this personally, because like we don't have sit down conversations about like things we struggle with. But and you know, maybe you guys don't struggle with any, like maybe life's good, like maybe like yeah, everything's awesome. Pierce just gave a thumbs up. Like maybe like right now for me, like life's pretty good. Like there's nothing going on that's worthy of like me like whining about. Like I can't complain about anything. Life's awesome. But like eventually something's gonna come. I forget what it's called. I think it's called like Murphy's Law or something, where like anything that bad that could happen will eventually happen. Like something's gonna happen, not like everything, not like no, not that one.
Wait,
Pierce.
explain.
I don't know. I just pulled it. I just like it popped into my head, so I said it.
Now you're getting me sad.
You don't have to be sad.
No, now
There's
I'm
nothing to be
worried.
sad about.
I'm worried now.
Well, that's what the lesson's for.
Okay.
Now you're anxious? Okay, well that's what the lesson's for. Alright? So, but like the goodness and like the thumbs up, like my life's awesome right now, doesn't last forever. Bad stuff happens, and it's going to happen. Especially if you're a Christian, like the Bible promises that trials and tribulations and sufferings are going to come your way. In 1 Peter 1:6, it says, in this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been grieved by various trials. Like, you rejoice in the fact that you have trials. And it's like, this is just saying, like, eventually, you're going to get hit with trials if you're a Christian, because it's a testing of your faith. Like, eventually, someday down the road, maybe not tomorrow, but, like, something's going to happen where it's going to test your faith. It's going to test if you're going to believe in God. It's going to test if you actually believed in God to begin with. And that's the point of trials in a Christian life. So, trials, sufferings, hard times, really stinking, awful circumstances are eventually going to roll around in your life. And that's what we're going to talk about today in Philippians 1 verses 12 to 18a, which is like the beginning of the verse. So this is our proposition statement. It is, we can have joy in suffering when we glorify God in the midst of it. So say it back. Everyone look at it, read it, and say it back to me.
We can have joy in suffering when we glorify God in the midst of it.
All right, now I'm going to read it one more time. We can have joy in suffering when we glorify God in the midst of it.
We can have joy in suffering when we glorify God in the midst of it.
Yeah, that was weird. That sounded weird. All right, so we can have joy in suffering when we glorify God in the midst of it. Do any of you guys have your Bibles?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
All right, well, if you feel like opening them, I understand. We talked about it. All right, we're gonna read Philippians 1 verses 12 to 18. No, you're fine. It's gonna pop up on the screen. All right. Why's that on the bottom? All right. Philippians 1, 12 through 18, verse 12. I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel, so that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest that my imprisonment is for Christ. And most of the brothers having become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment are much more bold to speak the word without fear. Some indeed preach Christ from envy and rivalry, but others from goodwill. The latter do it out of love, knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel. The former proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, but thinking to afflict me in my imprisonment. What then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed, and in that I rejoice. All right, so what was that going on with Paul in this time? Do you guys remember? I think I have it.
He's in jail.
That was a little messed up. Paul. Yeah, so Paul's in jail. And what kind of, was his jail like cushy, where like once a day he went to like the yard and lifted and like
No.
like played cards with his friends and like stuff like that? No. What was the jail like? Do you guys remember?
He's in a house.
He's under house arrest at this time?
House
I don't
arrest
think so
after
at this
No,
time.
not house
It was
arrest?
with his
Okay.
hands and his feet.
And his
Yeah.
knees against the wall.
Uncomfortable.
I think there's
And
like
he couldn't even
He's
sit.
chained up in a drunk.
you weren't even here.
There
He's
were
chained
a
up
lot
like-
of jails.
I think there's like multiple.
They weren't good.
And there's like this one is like not controversial, but like there's multiple views and they're not settled on them yet. So he very well could have been under house arrest.
I'm afraid of him.
No, or I could be wrong, and you could be 100% right.
Oh, I'm going by what John MacArthur says.
Oh, okay, well he's probably right. All right, so Paul's in jail, and it's not like super cushy jail time. It's like this stinks jail time. Like he's like chained to the wall, like can barely move. The only way people clean up, like when you go to the bathroom, is if you have friends to clean it up for you. Like if not, the guards just kind of leave you to do your business, and you literally sit in jail for months in your own waste. Like jail stinks. Like it's not like the nice jail where you have a nice bed and like you have your roommate who's like probably mean and in a gang, but like he's not like sitting in his own poop on the ground. Like it's not. It was disgusting and it was terrible. So why was Paul in jail? Do you guys remember? Yeah.
Okay, I think because he was preaching the gospel.
Yeah, because he was preaching the gospel. Is that what you were going to say, Emma? Was it actually?
Because he was in the God gang.
No, that's not why.
Don't laugh at that.
Because he was preaching the gospel. Because Paul was in jail because he wouldn't stop telling people about Jesus. They'd be like, Paul, stop telling people about Jesus. And then Paul would be like, no, I'm not going to do that. And like they hated him for it. They hated him so much that one time they put him in jail. And yes.
On the package, it says you're not putting that in someone's eyes.
You're right.
Yeah, Tim.
You're right.
Sorry,
And-
that's
I can't read. No. Alright, so Paul was put in jail for sharing the gospel. And, it has to come to a point where Paul was sharing the gospel enough that, like, Paul in and of himself, they were like, Paul, if you don't stop running, they put you in jail. Like, it was enough that the governing authorities, like, in the city had to step in. And, like, what that makes me think of is, like, am I preaching the gospel enough to people I know, to people at work? Because I work at Kmart, and there's lots of unsaved people at Kmart. Like, I think I'm the only Christian there. Like, am I preaching the gospel enough to where, like, the management has to come talk to me and be like, Tim, like, shut up about Jesus for, like, 10 seconds, seriously. And it's like, that's not true about me. But, like, when you look at Paul, like, the leaders of the city had to come and put him in jail because he was talking about Jesus too much. And that's just super convicting for me. I don't know if it's convicting for you guys, but, like, that's like, man, like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I've just shared the gospel I've been working at Kmart for, like, 2 months, and I just shared the gospel for the first time with someone. Like, it took me that long to, like, build courage to, like, even, like, mention Jesus, yes.
I thought you.
Worked at Kmart?
No, I thought you. Wait, you were at, like, another store before Kmart?
No. Kmart forever.
Okay.
I work at Kmart.
That
Yeah.
was 2 weeks ago that you said yes.
No.
Yeah, and I work here, too.
No, it was just a few weeks ago.
No, you said something about. Yes. 2 weeks ago.
Alright, well, to move on, I've only worked at Kmart. Alright, so, Paul was put in jail for telling people about Jesus. And then if you look in the verses, you'll see, let me see, in verse 13 it says, it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest that my imprisonment is for Christ. Paul got put in jail for telling people about Jesus, and then while he's in jail, it says that the entire imperial guard, like all the guards there, knew while he was in jail, and it's for preaching the gospel. Like, Paul got put in jail for preaching the gospel, and then while he was in jail, preached the gospel to all the guards who were guarding him for preaching the gospel. Like, that takes, like, a lot of gumption to, like, I don't even know how to use that word, but, like, that takes, like, a lot of, like guts. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Like, to be able to preach the gospel to the people who are guarding you because you're preaching the gospel. Like, and this is Paul's writing from that perspective here. Like, I'm too much of a weenie to share the gospel at Kmart, and Paul's sharing the gospel with the people who arrested him for sharing the gospel. Like, how awesome is that Paul's willing to do that? And he just sets, like, such an awesome example for me, for, like, you guys. I don't know, like, I didn't share the gospel with anyone until I was, like, 19. Like, it took me forever to, like, get the guts to do it. Because I was so, like, wrapped up in myself and so afraid. So, Paul shared the gospel with the people who put him in jail. and and had authority over him. Like they could do what he wanted. They could do what they wanted to him, and he still was willing to share the gospel with them. So during all this time, Paul's like in jail, sitting in his own feces, like having to deal with all this like awful stuff of being in jail. Like in jail, you don't get treated kindly. It's not like the best thing in the world to be in jail. Like your jailers aren't like, hey Paul, how's it going today? It's like if you like, hey, can I have some like water, Mr. Jailer, sir? It's like, no, you can't have water. Like I hate you. Stop telling me about Jesus. Like that's what Paul was going through. So, what is Paul rejoicing in this time? Like what gives Paul the joy in prison to be able to say, like, that he doesn't even, like when Paul writes this letter, he doesn't talk, Pierce, stop talking.
Do you hear that? Can you hear that?
I can hear that.
was coming from like a
Do you know
chair.
what it is?
It's like, the roof.
That's a
What
chair.
is it doing?
No, it's not.
It's no,
It's
it's
the
that.
roof.
It's that thing.
It's the roof.
I think you're really.
What? Why is it doing
That
that?
thing is dripping water. Drip water everywhere.
Okay.
I don't know what it does, but it makes a noise.
No,
and it
it drips
distracts
like-
you
oh,
from
yeah,
your
it
drips
eye.
water
Yeah,
into the roof.
it is
Dirty,
gross.
gross.
Ugh.
I don't know how to fix it because I'm not a...
It's the wall.
Okay.
What else, Pierce? What else is wet? Is that it?
Not up there.
Alright, so, to get back to what we were talking about, what gives Paul joy in prison to when he writes the book of Philippians, he doesn't even talk about how terrible his situation is. Like, he doesn't write the book and talk about, like, oh man, guys, like, really pray for me because this is tough. Like, everyone's so mean and the jailers don't, and I'm starving to death. Like, Paul doesn't say anything like that in Philippians. He just talks about how, hey guys, the whole Imperial Guard knows I'm in here for Jesus, and also because I'm in here for Jesus, all the other Christians in the church are like more bold to talk about Jesus because I'm in prison for Jesus, and it's encouraging them. So, what does Paul rejoice in? What gives Paul the ability and the joy to, what was it? Unshakable. What gives Paul this unshakable joy? Anyone?
The gospel.
The gospel. The fact Paul gets this unshakable joy in the fact that, the gospel. Yes, the gospel. Paul gets this unshakable joy in the fact that this is part of the gospel, that God's being glorified because of his imprisonment. Because Paul's in prison, God is being glorified. Now, do you guys right here? Paul can rejoice in his trials because God is being glorified. And we can take that back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, I can rejoice in the fact that my grandpa died because through his salvation, God can be glorified. Through that story, I can tell people that my grandpa died in 2 weeks. It came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, he got sick and he died. But because of that, I can tell people, but 2 days before he died, he accepted Jesus Christ as his Savior, and now he's in heaven. And that just shows that God orchestrated that event to happen so my grandpa could get saved, and it's super cool. So do you guys know what does it mean to glorify something? Anyone know?
To do something like
To do something pleasing. What is it? To praise something? Yeah, like those are definitely like part of it. Anyone else? Any idea? Emma.
Get something glory.
To get, okay. Yes, to get something glory. See, okay, to glorify something simply means to make much of something or make it seem very important.
I was just about to say that.
So when you glorify something, you make much of it. You talk about it, you make it seem like way better than it is, or you make it seem as good as it is, or you make it important. So like in sports and football, like we glorify like the violence of football. Like we love watching people get hit really hard, and we're like, oh, the NFL's turning into a pansy sport because you're not allowed to hit them as hard as you can. But it's like we love to glorify violence. We love to, like in our culture, like all the movies with lots of blood and guts, we're like, yeah, that's awesome. Like
Zombies!
so, or you guys know when like parents have newborn babies, and if you have Facebook, I don't know if any of you guys have Facebook. When a parent has a newborn baby, your Facebook feed is like literally newborn babies. Like it's like they're like all their pictures. If you like go on their like account, it's like baby, 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 baby. Oh, this is my baby drinking milk. This is my baby sleeping. This is my baby like like in a
Just
blanket. Yeah, this is my blanket sitting. This is my baby crying. This is my baby taking a bath. And we're like, they're like, okay, yeah, your baby. This is what? Was that supposed to be funny?
I don't know.
What did you say? Did you say puppy monkey baby?
I never said that before.
I actually didn't see the Super Bowl.
That's
I'm
from
so
the
mad
Super Bowl
that the
commercial.
Broncos won.
Yeah. I wish I
I
won.
want to see that commercial.
I fell asleep during the Super Bowl. I was different myself.
So back it up. So, in a sense, the parent is oh wait, darn it. The parent is glorifying the baby. It's making the baby seem super duper important. It's making much of the baby or talking about the baby. The baby's the most important thing. Or is it relevant?
It's something to do with that.
So no.
No, I was just saying, people, do that with, like, their cars and stuff.
People do it with people do it with
I
their
don't
cars.
understand a car.
Or the next one this one like hits close to home for me is sports.
Gosh.
Is like my favorite part. Justin pointed this out. Is that they have an Eli Manning like tied around his neck, which is
Man, that's a real fan.
Oh, yeah.
Who's that?
Eli
it's
Manning.
funny.
Yeah, for the Giants.
No, it's a fan.
Well, that's a fan, but around the neck.
That's
All right,
a fan.
but like
That's
even in
fair.
sports, when people wear their Eagles jerseys all the time, or they wear their Eagles hats, or they like when they go to games, they wear all like midnight green, and they wear like all this crazy Eagle stuff. You're glorifying the Eagles. You're making the Eagles seem awesome and important, and you're making much of the Eagles, and they seem like we glorify the team and make it so important. We make it seem like it's the best team in the world and how much we love it because like we wear midnight green or we put tons of pictures up of our baby or whatever that is. Like we glorify it. So what glorifying God is glorifying God is living, talking, thinking, and acting in such a way that God is made to be the most important thing. So when Paul's glorifying God in prison, he's living, he's acting, he's thinking, he's talking like God's the most important thing in his life. So that's why Paul takes the view off himself, and he doesn't sit there and go, man, prison really stinks. This is the worst thing ever that's ever happened to me. I can't believe I'm in this situation. When Paul's sitting in prison, he's not thinking about that. Paul's sitting in prison going, how can I glorify God through this? Well, because I'm in prison, Christ is being proclaimed. Because I'm in prison, everyone knows about Jesus, because I'm in prison for Jesus. So every single Imperial Guard person knows why I'm here. And they might not have known that if I wasn't in prison. So that's how Paul can rejoice in prisons, because he
I don't think he's an pessimist. I think he's
an optimist.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to be at that point when you're sitting in prison. But that's like, you
Saying,
glorify
I'm
God.
So glad I'm here.
Well, I'm not saying I'm so glad I'm here, but like, there's,
Looking
Yes,
on the brighter side, every little tiny.
yeah, but not just looking on the brighter side. It's not just being an optimist or looking on the brighter side.
Sour totally.
It's not thinking of yourself and glorifying God instead. All right. So, glorifying God is living, thinking, acting, and talking. Living, talking, thinking, and acting in such a way that God is made to be the most important thing. So how can you do that for your own selves? How can you glorify God in your own lives right now, even though you might not be going through a bunch of like stuff, and a bunch of really hard situations? I just wrote down a couple of things. So when we're with our families and we talk to them like God commands us to talk, is one way we can glorify God. Kindly, patiently. That's really hard for me. I think I've talked about my grandma before, but like she's really old and she's really like frustrating to be around because she's so old that like she'll forget stuff, or she's like inconsiderate, not because she's inconsiderate by nature, but because she's just forgetful. So like she'll forget that I'm sleeping and walk downstairs and turn the lights on and like start doing all this stuff. I'm like, Grandma, what are you doing? And like or like with my parents, like it's really easy to snap back at them when there's like, because I have this like complex because I'm 21, I'm supposed to be an adult now. It's like when they try to parent me still, I'm like, Mom, stop telling me to do my laundry. I know, like, and it's like that's not how I'm supposed to respond to my mom. That's not how I'm supposed to talk to my grandma. I'm supposed to, so I can glorify God with the way I talk to them by talking patiently, kindly, lovingly to my parents, lovingly to my grandma. We can glorify God when we're with our friends and we act like the Bible commands us to act. We can act in a way that's that's different than the sinful ways of the world. That's set apart. We don't cuss. We don't find joy or find things funny that are sinful. like inappropriate humor. We don't laugh at those kind of jokes. We don't tell those kind of jokes. We try to steer clear when those kind of jokes are being told. It's like we don't want to. We can glorify God when we're with our friends by acting in a way the Bible commands. So patiently, we don't laugh at unclean humor, stuff like that, where it's like it's obvious that we're Christians because of the way we're acting with our friends. Or we can glorify God when we're home alone, when we don't look or listen to things that God tells us are sinful. So inappropriate pictures, music that cusses, TV shows that are just full and riddled with sin. And a couple like pop to my mind, like I don't. So like anything like why would we want to entertain ourselves with things that Jesus had to die for? Why do we want to entertain ourselves with inappropriate pictures? Why do we want to entertain ourselves with like all sorts of garbage that's on TV? And I'm not gonna like tell you not to watch like Game of Thrones or like certain shows like that. But like what? Like I'm not gonna tell you to not to watch that. But like if Jesus had to die for stuff that the show makes a living off of, why are we taking the time to watch it? If Jesus was nailed to the cross because of how bad, like because of the stuff on the show is, like because of how sinful it is, like why are we going to take our time to entertain ourselves with that kind of stuff? Or we can glorify God, and this one kind of hits home really hard with me, when you have the opportunity to share the gospel with unsafe friends and family, and you I put weenie out, and you don't weenie out, and you tell them about Jesus and proclaim Jesus regardless of how it will affect you. So like at work, if I were to tell everyone at work about Jesus all the time, I would not have any friends at work. And like there's obviously tactfulness, like I don't just only talk about Jesus with like unsafe people or else they hate me, and like they never want to hear about Jesus again. But there's a tactfulness there, where you talk about Jesus not because you're not afraid to talk about Jesus. So glorifying God is, I have it again. Glorifying God is simply making much of Jesus. Glorifying God is simply making much of Him when we live in the ways that we live, talk, and think and act. So you can glorify God in your life by living in a way that makes Jesus look awesome. You can glorify God by talking in a way that the Bible commands to, and it makes Jesus look like He's worth following. Alright, so let's take a look back at verses 12 to 18 again really quickly. And if we read them, I'll just read them real quick. I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel, so that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest that my imprisonment is for Christ. Most of the brothers, having become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, are much more bold to speak the word without fear. Some indeed preach Christ from envy and rivalry, but others from goodwill. The latter do it out of love, knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel. The former proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, but thinking to afflict me in my imprisonment. What then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed, and in that I rejoice. Alright, so, super quickly. Paul was glorifying God in prison in two main ways. Paul made sure everyone knew why he was in prison. When Paul was in prison, everyone knew that like no one was going by Paul's cell and like, I wonder what he's in here for. It was like if you walk by his cell, he was like, hey, do you have a minute to talk about Jesus? Like everyone knew why Paul was in prison. And number two, because Paul rejoiced because people were hearing the gospel because he was in prison and even though he was in prison. So even though Paul's circumstances stunk like poop, like even though it was awful what was going on in Paul's life, it wasn't good. Like if people came in and like took one of you and put you in prison right now for being a Christian, you wouldn't be like super pleased and be like sending letters. Like I doubt you guys would be able to send letters and be like, hey guys, keep rejoicing in Jesus, it's awesome here. Like it would be really hard to do that. So the fact that Paul was doing this shows the truth of the gospel. That when we glorify God in the middle of our suffering, when we make sure that our lives aren't about us in the middle of our suffering, we can rejoice in that. Alright, so I think I have. Paul was absolutely obsessed with making God look glorious and telling people about Jesus. That's how Paul was able to rejoice in suffering. Because he took his eyes off himself. He didn't look at his circumstances and think about, oh, poor me, this is terrible. He looked at his circumstances and said, how can I make Jesus look awesome? What can I do right now that makes Jesus look big and awesome and great like he is? So, what I need real quickly is 2 volunteers. Alright, I want Emma and Angelina. Okay, so what you guys can do That would be fun. You guys can stand right there. All right. Now here's what I want you to do. Emma, I want you guys to look at each other. Emma, I want you to say as many good things about Angelina as you can. And even if you run out of things to say, make stuff up. Just start saying good things. Make Angelina seem awesome and big and glorious.
You're awesome. I love your hair. It's perfect.
I like to
Oh, you're beautiful.
Keep going.
You have great sneakers. You're very powerful.
You're very powerful. All right. Now what I want everyone else to do is grab a pool noodle.
We can hit people.
What? I want everyone to grab a pool noodle. Let's see if we have any. You don't get it. All right. Now, what I want everyone to do is start hitting Emma with the pool noodles. Now, Emma. Wait, not. Now, Emma, I want you to. Emma, I want you to try to glorify and make Angelina.
You are awesome, Angelina! You're the best friend in the world!
Keep going.
I love you! You still have great sneakers! You're so much fun!
Still have nice outfits. All right, you guys can stop. You guys can stop. Now, all right, you guys can sit down. Thank you for helping. Thank you for helping.
Welcome for being
Now, okay, now, do you guys get what I was trying to do? In order to have joy, I don't know if this is, in order to have joy in suffering, we have to take our eyes off of ourselves and focus on bringing glory to God. So, in that illustration, Pierce, in that illustration, Angelina was God. That was supposed to be the point. And Emma was trying to take her eyes off of herself. Focus. Emma was trying to take her eyes or her focus off of herself and continue to glorify Angelina even in the middle of her suffering. Does that make sense? You guys get that? Was it hard? Was it hard to talk about Angelina while you're getting hit? But did it make it a little easier to get hit? Yes. See, does that Pierce? Shine in the eyes of it. You put the noodle down. Put it down. Alright, so I think okay. We'll get that. Alright, so Paul. Alright, real quick, this is the end, guys. Paul was able to make his imprisonment and all the junk going on in his life bring glory to God because during it all, he wasn't looking at his own life. He wasn't thinking about, man, this really stinks. Well, I'm sure he was. Like, when bad stuff happens, you tend, like when my brother, got into his longboarding accident, I wasn't just not sad and super joyful and be like, I have this unshakable joy in the gospel and nothing affects me anymore. No, it's like I was really sad, but in that, I recognized that God has a plan for everything. That God has a plan through everything, and that He's gonna, His will's gonna be done. And I could rejoice in that fact that God's still bigger than my brother hitting his head. And God was still bigger than Paul getting put in prison. Because God orchestrates everything to happen for His glory. Alright, so, to end, we have a quote by John Piper. The evil and suffering in this world are greater than any of us can comprehend. But evil and suffering are not ultimate, God is. Regardless of everything going on, God is the biggest thing, and God orchestrates everything to happen for His glory. So, in our suffering, we can have joy when we try to glorify God, when we try to make much of God. Kind of like how Emma was trying to make much of Angelina, even though she was getting bombarded by poor people. See, it was terrible. But you made it. That's the point. All right, you guys get that? Does that make sense? Yeah? If it doesn't, you can ask me questions after. Okay, let's pray.